Riding a double-digit win streak into the final month of the 2025 season, should the Denver Broncos be home dogs to the Green Bay Packers this weekend? And is it time to question whether or not the Denver Nuggets have the depth and or the firepower to keep pace with the Oklahoma City Thunder in the race to the top of the Western Conference? All things to come on today's rundown. Thank you so much for joining us. While you're here, make sure you like and subscribe to our Denver Sports 1043 The Fan YouTube channel. You can find us at Denver Sports 1043 on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. If you're watching us on X or on Facebook, we love you. We appreciate you. Like, share, subscribe, hit the comments, and turn on those post notifications so you never miss a moment with us. Tons to get into today. I want to welcome in Denver Sports social media manager, friend of the program, Anilo Piro. Anilo, what's going on, man?
What's up, my man? I mean, here we go. Home stretch of football season, 4 action-packed games I think that we're expecting from the Denver Broncos. It starts with Green Bay. I know we'll talk a little Nuggets as well, but good time to be a Denver sports fan.
Can we just take a second to touch on what you just mentioned there? We're on the backstretch of this Broncos season. We got a month left to play and 4 really critical games. I mean, you have this game against the Packers. Yes, it's an NFC opponent, but it's a quality NFC opponent. It feels like it may be a potential litmus test type of game for a Broncos team that has kind of risen to the occasion more often than not this season, but it's been a little bit of a dogfight to get there, and they've had some miraculous late-game heroics to kind of keep this thing afloat. Then you've got a conference game against the Jacksonville Jaguars and 2 divisional games starting with Christmas Day against the Chiefs, and then a Week 18 game against the Chargers that, depending on how these next 3 be, not just for a top seed in the conference, but for the AFC West in general, because of the way that the Chargers have kind of spaced things. But can we just take a second, Anilo, and kind of embody that Paul Rudd Hot Ones meme where it's like, look at us, man. Look at us. Who thought we would be here? Who thought that 14 weeks into the NFL season, the Denver Broncos would be in sole possession of the number 1 seed in the AFC? And we're talking about a more than puncher's chance that they put themselves 2 playoff games at Empower Field at Mile High away from going back to Santa Clara for another chance at a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, if you would have told me that, with this final home game stretch for the Denver Broncos, that they'd be 11 wins atop of the conference in the driver's seat for the number 1 seed in the AFC, I would have said you're crazy, Richie. That's what I would have said before the season started. But here we are, to your point. I mean, the Chiefs, a lot of people were predicting they would fall off. That has been the case this season. Chargers have been up and down. And you got to give credit where credit is due. Despite having their back against the wall, the Denver Broncos have managed to figure out ways to win games, right? You think back to that game against the Giants. You think about the Jets in London, Washington just a couple of weeks ago, the Raiders there on Thursday Night Football about a month ago. And so to their credit, this is a battle-tested team heading into these final 4 games of the season. And buckle up, my man. This game against the Packers this weekend is going to be an absolute banger.
I think it is too. I use the term litmus test, right? When you're talking about measuring yourself up against something else or revealing your true colors. And I think there is an element of a measuring stick game this weekend against the Packers. I know it's an NFC opponent. I know that it's not a make or break type of game for the division or the conference, but it's a good football team, Anilo. It's a team that's found themselves in the top 3 of the NFC by virtue of their win over the Bears this past weekend. And again, I think that when you look at this Broncos team, and I've said it a handful of times over the last week, they've proven to me that they can go 12 rounds with just about any team in the National Football League. They have in moments, in certain situations, proven that they can give you a semblance of like a first-round knockout. This last game against the Raiders was never in doubt. It was their first wire-to-wire win of the season without trailing, even though the final score of 24-17 would indicate that it was maybe closer than it was. They obviously had a 20-point victory over the Dallas Cowboys earlier in the season, and they beat up on the Joe Burrow-less Cincinnati Bengals. But this fight, I think, against the Green Bay Packers, if we're going to stick it to a boxing analogy, this feels one that leans more in the heavyweight nature than some of the games that they've played in their recent past. And I say that because this is a team that's built very similarly, I think, to the Broncos. They have a stout defense anchored by a good pass rush. Micah Parsons obviously factoring in to that equation. And offensively, they have Josh Jacobs, who's been a Bronco killer in recent weeks. Now, we'll see with his practice status. He's going to miss his 2nd consecutive day of practice this week. But they found ways to run the ball relatively consistently. And when Jordan Love is on, man, the Packers look like they're hard to beat. And I say that, Anilo, because, damn it, that sounds like the Denver Broncos. When Bo Nix is rolling and the offense finds a way to stay balanced and run the ball, The Denver Broncos offensively seem like they can keep pace with anybody, and they are complementary to a championship caliber defense. So when you're looking at this matchup against the Packers, how much of it do you think we are going to walk away from as a legitimate evaluation of how the Broncos are going to perform against a postseason caliber team?
I put a tremendous amount of stock into how this game plays out for the Denver Broncos. I was on with our good friend Joey Freeberg earlier this week, and some fans in Broncos country didn't like my take about that, about like, oh, they've proven it in this game and they keep moving the goalposts and this, that. I am sympathetic to that. I understand that. But, even the close game against Washington and then last week against Vegas, yes, 2 quality wins for this Denver Broncos team. But the Green Bay Packers, to use your heavyweight analogy, Richie, like they're in a league of their own with respect to the opponents the Broncos have had to play over the last handful of weeks. And so I personally put a lot of stock into how this game plays out. And I love your analogy. And I also heard our guys, Dover and Cecil, talking about it on my drive in to do this show, that the Packers kind of feel like the NFC's version of the Denver Broncos, right? Jordan Love is really good at picking apart teams when they blitz. We know they have Micah Parsons up front and what they've been doing on defense. Sean Payton, great head coach. Matt LaFleur, great head coach. So they're very similar in a lot of different ways. And it was something that was thrown out yesterday when I was at practice down there at the Broncos Park powered by Common Spirit. The question of like, could this be a Super Bowl preview? Right? 2 of the best teams in the league, one in the AFC, one in the NFC. Maybe they meet in Santa Clara come February. But again, I put a lot of stock into how the Broncos play in this game because, look, I'm a believer. I'm high on this Denver Broncos team. They've proven me wrong throughout the course of this season. But this is a real opportunity for them to go out there and assert themselves as one of, if not the best team in the AFC with a win on Sunday.
I'll take the parallels and the comparison between the Green Bay Packers and the Denver Broncos one step further. Anilo, as I've watched Jordan Love and the Packers this season, just as I've watched the Denver Broncos and Bo Nix, obviously more closely this season, I think there's going to be an element of looking in the mirror when Bo Nix and the Broncos take on the Packers this Sunday, because there is a part of me that feels like Jordan Love is a further up the rung ladder on the career arc and trajectory of Bo Nix. When I see Jordan Love, now Bo Nix uses his legs a little bit better and a little bit more frequently than Jordan Love does, but if we're just talking about overall performance as a passer and as a quarterback, I think that they're fit within the team. The way that Matt LaFleur works around Jordan Love and builds the team around him is similar to the way that Sean Payton and Bo Nix are built around within the Denver Broncos. But I think that if someone were to tell me that Jordan Love as a pure passer is a near the top mark for where Bo Nix can develop and grow into, I don't think that's crazy. I don't think that's a crazy statement.
No, I don't think so either, right? And I know James Marilat and other folks here at the station have talked about Bo's more than a game manager, because I think he's been labeled as that. He's still very early in his career, right?
Yeah.
But last year you heard that. For the first half of this season, you've heard that. Here's one thing where I think that Bo Nix kind of separates himself from Jordan Love, and I don't mean this as a slight. Bo Nix could play bad or off, up and down for 3 quarters, but when you get to the 4th quarter, I personally trust Bo Nix's ability to flip that switch and get it going more than I do of Jordan Love. Jordan Love, to me, just from what I've seen, and I'm not religiously watching the Packers the same way that I am the Denver Broncos, when he gets in a rut, it's hard for him to get out of that rut. Whereas Bo Nix has super short-term memory. I mean, we've seen it time and time again this season with the 4th quarter comeback. So I think that's where they separate themselves. But I think your point is well taken with respect to the trajectory of Bo.
To your point, I mean, we've seen Jordan Love, who, by the way, has had the Packers in postseason contention every single year he's been a starter, but it's been in some of those moments, like the game against the 49ers not that long ago that comes to mind, where it's like, hey, the ball's in Jordan Love's hands. The Packers have a gotta-have-it game-winning drive with under 2 minutes to go, and he throws a very costly, game-ending, painful interception that was just a total misread on the defensive side of the ball. Bo has had moments like that. I mean, he threw the gimme ball to Bobby Wagner against the Washington Commanders, right? Late in the game and all that, but eventually won in overtime. But I think your point stands in that Bo Nix has proven. I think that's one of the biggest things that we've learned about Bo Nix. I asked this question to Will Peterson on From the Nosebleeds earlier today. I basically asked him, what have we learned about Bo Nix in his sophomore campaign that we didn't really know or know as confidently in his rookie campaign? And Will said that he sees a little bit more ability and consistency to string together performances and wins that he can kind of manage games and keep things afloat. And it's not so much of a boom or bust roller coaster, where the highs are crazy high and the lows are crazy low. Especially when you look at the split between the first month of the season of his rookie year compared to the last month or so for Bo Nix. But I think another thing that I would add to that, similar to what we've been talking about, is I think Bo Nix has proven pretty unequivocally in the course of his sophomore season that he is built for that quote-unquote moment, that proverbial time when the lights are brightest and you get into that clutch factor of a game. Bo has proven that he is wired in a way that does not allow him to wither traditionally or wilt in those situations. He does rise to the occasion. You'd like to see it strung together a little bit more consistently, quarter to quarter, half to half, and week to week, but he has had ample opportunity to implode in situations where the offense has not performed well for the majority of the game, and he's actually done the opposite, and it's a driving reason alongside the championship, in my opinion, caliber defense, why they're on a 10-game win streak and riding in this position in the AFC.
Yeah, he's tough as nails, and he's got extremely thick skin. And again, I actually think, Richie, not to try to go into the crystal ball here, I think you're going to see that play out on Sunday. Like, I was giving out some predictions, and I'm thinking about how this game's going to go. I think it's like a 3-point win either way for the Broncos or the Packers. And it would not surprise me whatsoever. Minute 45 left on the clock, couple of timeouts in the back pocket, Bo Nix, offense going out there. They got to deliver a game-winning drive, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown. Bo Nix has proven that in those moments, to your point, when the lights are the brightest, he can go out and shine, and he can rise to the occasion. And I just think, again, tremendous amount of respect for the Green Bay Packers. I don't think this is a blowout game one way or the other. Now, I would love to see Denver go out there and hang 14 on them in the first quarter and try to put the kids to bed with Green Bay. But I think you're going to see that clutch gene that you alluded to from Bo Nix really come to fruition, not even come to fruition, but play out once again against a playoff caliber opponent in Green Bay at home this weekend. I think you're going to see it. Will Lutz walk-off field goal. That's my prediction.
Okay. Well, that would be very much in line with the majority of the Broncos' wins and losses this season, as they've had more than half of their games during this win streak during this season come down to the final play, one way or the other. They got walked off twice in the first 3 weeks of the season, but they've had, the Washington Commanders game came down to the final play. The Houston Texans game came down to the final play. They've had so many moments. The Giants game comes down to the final play. They've had so many moments in this season and so many games where it's come down to a literal singular play to decide the winner or loser and the fate, of that particular game. But Anilo, factoring in the body of work that the Broncos have put together, which you alluded to, and the fact that they have found ways to hang around. They've won ugly. They've had a handful of pretty wins, and they've done it with various different ways. Sometimes the run game, especially with J.K. Dobbins, has been the prevalent force. Sometimes the defense has had to drag the team to the finish line and then just hope that Bo Nix and the offense can get it, over the finish line. And then there's been times where Bo Nix and his arm and the passing game have had to kind of take the forefront or center stage in that regard. Given the body of work that the Broncos have put together on a double-digit win streak as the top seed in the AFC, does it surprise you at all that they are home underdogs on the tail end of that against, albeit a good Green Bay Packers team?
I was sitting in that chair. I know that the listeners can't see it right now, but just, probably 10 feet away, I was doing from the nosebleeds with our guy, Joey Freeberg, there on Monday morning. And we were kind of going back and forth throughout the course of this game. And I forget how the thought kind of spurred for me, but I'm like, what is the line on this game? And it's less about a betting perspective. I just respect what the Vegas odds makers throw out with regards to what a game, how it might play out, right? They're on the number more often than not. My initial thought was a bit shocked when I saw the Denver Broncos as home underdogs, but I think that's my local orange and blue glasses bias when I saw that, because I'm like, this team hasn't lost since like September. They don't lose at home. Like, I'm not sold on Jordan Love and the Packers. Like, what is this disrespectful line for the Denver Broncos? But then I take a step back and I try to put myself in the shoes of the average NFL fan. I think the league as a whole and the fan bases as a whole, not including the Denver Broncos, are still not sold on this Denver Broncos team.
Right.
I think a lot of people are waiting for the bottom to fall out with this team, with Bo Nix, with Sean Payton and that defense. I don't think people think they're as good as their record says they are. Now, I see home underdog. Jonathan Franklin Myers was asked about that yesterday. Sean Payton, Bo Nix was asked about that yesterday. Nothing really. JFM had a good bite, but, Bo's downplaying it, says his mom thinks he's going to win the game, so we're going to be good there. Sean downplays it a little bit. But you best believe there's a little bit of a respect factor that comes in. And I bet you, I don't know this for a fact, but I bet you that's lingering in the minds of some of these players in that locker room. So I think the line's about accurate. It's not like they're saying the Packers are a 7-point favorite necessarily. It's a field goal type of game. But what more does this Denver Broncos have to do to get the respect from the national media, the odds makers alike? Home underdogs where they haven't lost a home game since last year and they haven't lost a football game since September is crazy.
Here is what John Franklin Myers had to say earlier this week about the fact that his Denver Broncos are currently underdogs to the Green Bay Packers despite playing in their own backyard.
Do you guys even care what the national narrative is? Underdog, favorite, whatever?
Nah, I mean, it's not our narrative. You know what I'm saying? Everybody that's talking ain't in this building for real. They ain't seeing what we do every day. They ain't putting the work in. So, we go about business one way, and, when it's time to go, it's time to go.
Does Sean bring that kind of stuff up to you in meetings? Like, okay, this is what people think of you, or is that?
I think that he has to bring a little bit of it up, but he doesn't care about it, neither do we. I mean, you can't control what other people say. And honestly, we won 10 straight at home, 10 straight, and it's like, you're still underdogs. How can you listen to what anybody says? What are they talking about?
We've won 10 straight at home and we're still underdogs. How can you listen to anybody that's putting that out there? JFM says a lot there, obviously, talking about how, hey, everybody that's out there doing that talking, they're not in this building. They're not going through what we're going through and handling business the way that we handle business. And, we don't pay attention to, those things. Anilo, it does kind of speak to me. And I think this is larger. This is an extrapolation of that JFM comment and maybe more of an indictment on the Broncos as a whole in a positive way. It's hard to imagine. In fact, it's actually not hard to imagine. This is pretty unequivocally the healthiest, most tight-knit, positive, winning, cultural aspect that this Broncos locker room and organization has embodied since they won the Super Bowl. The way that these players, both offensively and defensively and crossing the sides of the ball together, are so in sync with each other. They are so bought in the belief system, in the structure that they come into each and every week with. Anilo, without that, and I think this quote from JFM is kind of a indicator of that, of the fact that, like, hey, we just do our thing. We don't listen to the outside noise. Those guys that are saying those things, they don't know what we've got going on within the walls of Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit. Without that, it feels almost impossible to imagine that the Broncos could have maintained their composure, stuck with each other together long enough and consistently enough to maintain a 10-plus game win streak and win 11 of their first 13 or 14 tries.
I mean, Sean Payton said as much last Wednesday, I want to say, when I was down there at practice. Was the day that it was snowing. That was a fun drive home. But, the notion of he hates losing more than he likes winning. And then he also went on to kind of say that, he sees that bond, that communal bond that you're alluding to on the practice field, on the sidelines, but also like in the cafeteria, in the film room. Like, this is a very, very close-knit group of guys. The power of friendship, if you want to go with it that way too. Like, these are guys that play for one another. And I think that's one of the best traits that you could have for a team, whether you're on a 10-game win streak, you're on a couple-game losing streak, whatever it might be. The ability to kind of stay in the middle, not get too high, not get too low, I think is a real characteristic that you want to see in a championship caliber team. And I think the Denver Broncos have that characteristic for sure. I don't think you win. I don't think you're on this 10-game win streak without that. I don't think you're coming from behind to win in the ways in which you have without that. That undeniable belief that we can go out there, no matter the score, no matter the quarter, no matter the situation, and put our best foot forward when we need to get the job done. And again, to kind of bring it back to where we started this conversation, look, good win against the Raiders, good win against the Commanders, right? The Chiefs a few weeks ago. All of that is, happy dandy. This is a real test where I think this communal vibe with this Denver Broncos team and Bo Nix and Sean Payton and RJ Harvey and this defense as a collective whole, we'll see if they can rise to the occasion once again at home with a really, really good opportunity against the Packers.
Last thing on the Broncos, I want to check in on our weekly poll question that we put out on our social media channels at Denver Sports 104.3 The Fan. This week, Anilo was centered around Sean Payton, who is the head coach of the number one team in the AFC with a second-year quarterback that he handpicked, and they've put themselves in pole position going into the NFL playoffs, and it begs the question a lot around Broncos country and even some whispers nationally of should Sean Payton, who is currently on the outside looking in this particular metric, be more in consideration for NFL Coach of the Year this season? What say you?
How could he not be? I mean, let's not forget that this team still has the Russell Wilson dead cap money hanging over their heads this
It's the
season.
largest cap hit on their roster.
Right? And he put his neck on the line by drafting Bo Nix and the smokescreen with the Vikings. What Sean Payton has done after the Russell Wilson year, and even the Russell Wilson year, all things considered, is pretty, they were 9-7 that season?
8-9.
8-9, all things considered. I mean, that was pretty good, with what Sean Payton was able to do. But the leap that they've taken from last season, year one with Bo Nix, to year two, the defense looking sharp. RJ Harvey looking to be rounding into form as a running back. Pat Bryant getting more and more involved. And look, I was one of those guys, like the Broncos had to prove me wrong. I didn't think the Broncos would be 11-2 at this point. I really did. I'm not afraid to say that.
Mm-hmm.
But over the last, I don't know, call it month and a half, just being at the facility and seeing how these players interact and this and that is a testament to Sean Payton. And you don't rip off a 10-game win streak. And I understand they backed into wins against the Giants. The Texans wasn't great. The Jets in London. I understand all of that. But you don't have the type of win streak that you have right now without elite level coaching and elite level belief. And that starts with Sean Payton. So, I was looking at the odds with you earlier this week, and Sean Payton is like way down the pecking order for Coach of the Year. I believe Mike Vrabel is still the favorite, understandably so. The Patriots are going from worst to first. But Sean Payton has once again reasserted himself as one of the best head coaches in the NFL.
Yeah, I think if you were looking at it just from a resume standpoint, the things that Sean Payton has strung together in his third year here with the Broncos in the sophomore season with Bo Nix are worthy of that kind of merit or recognition, certainly to be in the conversation. What I will say is a fair counterpoint, as was pointed out on our show this week by James Palmer on Monday, is Sean Payton may have actually done himself some damage in the Coach of the Year department because of how vocal and verbose he was confidently about what this team is capable of. Putting out there after a wild card playoff appearance the year before, putting out in the offseason that this is the seventh team you've ever coached that you think can win a Super Bowl, that your quarterback is a top 4 or 5 guy in the next handful of years. It does in some respects. I can see a world where that takes a little bit of shine off of the accomplishment, because now it's transitioned to, hey, you're just doing what you said you were capable of doing. It makes it less about look at how much you've done and how much you're extending into another realm or another tier, overachieving to a certain degree. And it more becomes focused around, well, yeah, the Broncos are the number one team in the AFC because Sean Payton said this is a Super Bowl team. You know what I mean? And they're not like the Patriots, as you mentioned, going from having the top 5 pick in the NFL draft to being close to or right outside of the top seed in the AFC, or like what Liam Cohen is going through in Jacksonville, or the Seattle Seahawks with what's his name, McDonald. So I can see a world, even though what I think, if we're just talking about a resume, you've got bullet points on a piece of paper, what Sean Payton has accomplished from a cultural standpoint, from an organizational standpoint, revamping and retooling the roster, having the guts to move on from Russell Wilson, call your shot with the 6th quarterback taken off the board in a highly touted draft class in Bo Nix, and have it translate the way that it has, I think is unbelievably impressive and worthy of recognition. But if you're talking about the typical narrative and the way that these Coach of the Year awards and the trajectories typically go, I can actually see a world where Sean Payton maybe talked himself into a different evaluation with his offseason confidence.
Yeah, and I subscribe to that thought as well. Just for reference, he's 6th right now with respect to odds for Coach of the Year. Ben Johnson, Kyle Shanahan, Liam Cohen, Mike McDonald, and Mike Vrabel all ahead of him. But I got to be honest with you, Richie. I don't think Sean Payton gives a damn about winning Coach of the Year.
Nope.
I think it would be nice. Like, I think, yay, cool. Like, I think he'd be excited if he were to be named Coach of the Year. But Sean Payton is focused on one thing and one thing only right now, and that's becoming the first NFL head coach to win a Super Bowl with 2 different franchises. I think, again, you win Coach of the Year, he's probably not going to. That's the cherry on top for Sean. he could care less about that award right now. He's got his sights set on bigger things.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And certainly if the Broncos continue on the trajectory that they're on, as their win streak hopefully extends this weekend against the Packers, or maybe not. If you ask certain people around the station, maybe it's a better idea that they lose this game. Well, Will Peterson put a comment out there. The Broncos losing a game. Broncos losing a game wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing.
He's not wrong.
Yes, but again, this whole premise is flawed. And I said it to Mike Evans. I said it to Will Peterson. And I don't want to go down the rabbit hole again. But the caveat that was explicitly stated in Will's article is that it can't cost you the number 1 seed, right? The Broncos, we all seem to be in agreement, need the number 1 seed in the AFC to put themselves in a position where they get a first-round bye, and then they have home playoff games. The road to Santa Clara goes through the Mile High City. So, yes, the Broncos, in theory, if you want to go down the route of saying, hey, losing a game before the postseason begins and not having to worry about keeping this win streak alive and winning out the remainder of the season, which I think at that point would be like 14 games, 14 games out of 17.
That's insane.
Yeah. Because you learn a lot from losses sometimes compared to win. It allows you to reset, recalibrate, and go full steam ahead into the postseason. That's great. The problem is you don't get to pick which game to lose. Theory is predicated entirely on keeping New England underneath you at the top of the AFC. So let's say New England, who plays Buffalo in the early realm or the early window on Sunday at 11 a.m., if the Patriots beat Buffalo in New England, like they already went into Orchard Park and beat the Bills earlier this season, are we going to be looking at that game of like, if the Broncos lose this game, suddenly I'm not going to be that worried about it? Because then you remove that game advantage. And I know they have the tiebreaker, but you put yourself back neck and neck from a record standpoint for a team like New England, whose schedule only gets softer after this week. They have a Ravens team that's in disarray, and then the Dolphins, and I don't remember who they finished their season with. But every game for the Broncos, I feel like, needs to be focused on extending that buffer, maintaining their position at the top of the AFC until New England loses a game. Once New England loses a game, you can start to have a conversation of, okay, well, now maybe it's all right if one drops because of all the reasons stated.
Yeah, and obviously we got to see how the games play out. I think New England's dropping at least one of these 2 games between Buffalo and Baltimore. It'd be great if they drop both. But I think the point that I've taken away, because I did the social post for the story, I thought it was a great think piece from Will. If the Broncos were to lose a game, and let's just assume for conversation's sake, the Patriots also lose a game, it's not the sky is falling. What happened to the Broncos if they lose to the Packers or the Jags or the Chiefs or the Chargers? They could very well lose to the Chargers in the final week of the season because they might have the 1 seed in the division locked up. So there's a couple
That's the good best case scenario.
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways to look at it. So I think the big thing is here, again, I think the Patriots are losing at least one more game this season, which would give the Broncos the ability, not that they want to, but if they do, we don't have to freak out on a reaction Monday and be like, what is wrong with this team? The 1 seed is in jeopardy. They'll be okay. The sky will not be falling.
All right, I want to shift gears briefly here quickly to the Denver Nuggets, which means it is time to hit the turn, presented by the Birdie Bar, Louisville's premier indoor golf bar and restaurant. Check them out online or on Instagram at thebirdie.bar. Anilo, I had a conversation with Will Peterson earlier today where I said, the Avalanche are off to one of their best statistical starts in franchise history, and they are at a blistering pace, pacing the National Hockey League with the way that they've started their season. Just 2 regulation losses through the first 30 or so games of their season, although they drop a shootout loss to a bad Nashville Predators team most recently. We will see how things shake out and if the tides turn against the back-to-back reigning Stanley Cup champ Florida Panthers. But I said, and Will, I told Will, and I guess I'll ask you, it feels like the Colorado Avalanche, for the blistering pace and the start that they've put forward, when you look at the standings in the Western Conference and specifically the Central Division, the Dallas Stars are only 2 points behind them at 47. The Minnesota Wild are lurking sneakily below that. You have the expectation, you figure that Winnipeg and Edmonton are going to figure things out as well as the season continues down the back 9. Doesn't it kind of feel like the Avalanche, for all of the amazing things that they've done with their 2 regulation losses and 21 wins in the first 30 games of the season, don't have as much of a buffer or breathing room as you would think?
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. And of course, it's the Dallas Stars, right? Like,
Yep.
of course, like, you mentioned Minnesota's lurking, Chicago's still a young team with Bedard and whatnot. But, like, of course, it's the one team that has just been an absolute pain in the rear end for this Avalanche team. And to your point, when you talk about the now the one regulation loss and everything that's been playing out with the Avalanche this season, you would think that it's like the Avalanche are like way up here,
Right.
and everybody else is like very distant in the rearview mirror. That's just not the reality of the situation. So I think the Avalanche at this point just have to control what they can control. Look, they're probably going to have to place Dallas at some point in the playoff if they want to go to a Stanley Cup champion or a Stanley Cup final at that point too. I feel confident about the Avs though, and I understand Dallas is lurking and this and that. I like the goaltending. McKinnon has asserted himself as the best player in hockey right now. You still got Cale Makar. The depth pieces are rounding into form for this Avalanche team as well. They've hit on those. They're going to be fine.
Okay.
I'm not going to worry about the Stars until I have to in the second round.
I inherently agree with you, but I don't know if I agree with the exact same set of principles because I think it's a very parallel situation as it relates to the Denver Nuggets, who are off to a franchise best start through 23 games at 17-6, despite the fact that they're missing multiple starters, and that absence may linger beyond the holidays with Christian Brown and Aaron Gordon, with the reevaluations coming right around the new year. And the depth pieces that they've acquired having to already pull a little bit larger legwork than we certainly hoped or expected that they would, plus Julian Strother working his way back and the like. But Anilo, the Nuggets are off to one of the better starts in their franchise history through a 23-25 game stretch. And yet it feels like, unlike the Avalanche and the Dallas Stars, there is a massive gap or chasm between the Denver Nuggets and the Western Conference and the likes of the Oklahoma City Thunder, who just won their 16th straight game, and I believe they did it by a margin of 40-plus points against the Phoenix Suns. When you're looking at the start that the Nuggets have had, which, again, is one of the better starts through 23 games, if not the best, in the entire history of their franchise, and the fact that they're accomplishing all of that without two starters, which I think is a point of positivity or of optimism, how much of that diminishes or dwindles based on the fact that the Oklahoma City Thunder just look like an absolute force of nature, no pun intended because of their name, but almost unstoppable or impossible to keep pace with in the West?
They have one loss, Richie. Yeah, I don't even need the laptop for this. They don't play them until February 1st. The Oklahoma City Thunder are disgusting. And I'm a guy that last year was, all revved up on the Nuggets, and, they took them in the series as they did. And I still think the Nuggets can, contend with Oklahoma City in a playoff series, right? Like, your regular season record only goes so far with respect to what the playoffs will shape up to be and how they'll play out. I think things tighten up. Different factors come into play as well. I talked about it with our guy, Jake Shapiro, like 2 weeks ago. And I even think I mentioned it on Monday's show. Like, the Oklahoma City Thunder might just break the Golden State Warriors single season record for win-loss. They are an absolute wagon. Chet Holmgren is an incredible role player. SGA, despite the free throw merchant allegations, tremendous player. Their average age is under 27 still. I mean, Chet Holmgren's 23 years old. They have draft picks galore. They're going to get a top pick from the Clippers because of the dynamic there with the trade that landed them SGA. The Oklahoma City Thunder are scary, terrifying. There's no other way to put it. Say that to say this, though. If there's one man in the Western Conference, if there's one team in the NBA, because the Eastern Conference, I don't believe in the Knicks. I don't believe in the Celtics. Detroit's a cool story. I don't believe in them. I truly believe maybe San Antonio to a certain extent. The Nuggets are the team that have the best chance to knock off the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, they're currently down Aaron Gordon. They're currently down Christian Brown. But as you alluded to, they're still off to one of their best starts in franchise history. They're still winning games. Nikola Jokic looks awesome. Jamal Murray is wired, fired, and inspired right now. This Nuggets team is playing great basketball. The problem is looking up at the Green Giant and the Oklahoma City Thunder. I'm terrified of them. They're a lot better than I thought they were going to be this year, and I thought they were going to be great. One man, Nikola Jokic, the weight of the world, the weight of the NBA world rests on his shoulders to take him down.
Yeah, he is the Joker, but there may come a time where we need to throw the bat signal up in the air and say, hey, you're our only hope. Because, Anilo, you mentioned the Golden State Warriors and then the record-setting pace that they were on from a regular season wins perspective. They have tied that Golden State Warriors team for the best start through 25 games of a season with one regulation loss. I mentioned they've won 16 in a row, and they just beat the Suns to get that 16th consecutive victory by, I believe, a margin of 40-plus points. So, Anilo, while I inherently agree with you that I think the Denver Nuggets are probably the only team, certainly in the Western Conference and probably in the NBA, that can contend with the Oklahoma City Thunder in a 7-game series to come out of the West and prevent OKC from going back-to-back. What do you need to see from them between now and the start of the postseason to reaffirm and reassert that confidence?
Honestly, Richie, it's just health for me. Because I think what Jamal Murray's been doing out of the gate this season, that the version of Jamal Murray we're seeing right now is what Nuggets fans have wanted to see for the last handful of seasons. I mean, he looks dialed in. He's scoring, he's distributing. The bench players that they've brought in, Jonas Valanciunas has been exceptional. Tim Hardaway Jr. brings them some really nice three-point shooting and veteran savviness off the bench. Bruce Brown is doing his thing. Peyton Watson has taken some steps in the rebounding and the scoring department. I just need the Nuggets to be healthy. If the Nuggets are healthy going into that series, it's Nuggets in 7. I'll say that right now. That'll be because I don't think anyone can beat the Thunder in under 7 games. I think it's going the distance. Make sure Jokic is healthy. Let's get Cam Johnson a little bit, more consistent out there, which I think he's starting to. Jamal needs to play at the level of which he's been playing. AG and Christian Brown back with the accents on the bench. There's your formula.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the way that this Nuggets team looked at the start of the season when they were fully healthy and that bench was being able to be deployed in the way that it was designed and intended to when Ben Tenzer and Jonathan Wallace brought in Jonas Valanciunas and Tim Hardaway and Bruce Brown to go alongside this starting unit, one of the better starting fives in the NBA. We've seen what the Nuggets look like, and it was unbelievable. And it was happening while Jokic was averaging 5 to 6 minutes less per game than he was having to play in the last handful of seasons. So I agree with you. And listen, it's not crazy considering this Nuggets team last postseason with a significant number of injuries being faced from Aaron Gordon to Michael Porter Jr. and not even a semblance of the bench depth that they have in this 2025 season, still took the Oklahoma City Thunder to 7 games last postseason. That being said, as good as the Oklahoma City Thunder were last season en route to a NBA championship, this Thunder squad is different, man. They look like the tidal wave looks like it has officially crowned, and now it's just headed for shore, and it is going to crash at an alarming rate. And it's almost hard to make that analogy because of some of the things you said, Anilo, and that they may still be ascending from a youth standpoint and the draft picks that they're able to reload. We may actually not 100% know or not have seen yet the most dominant iteration of this Thunder squad, which is terrifying to think about.
Chet Holmgren is 23. He's not in his prime yet. Just think about that for a second. J-Dub's what, 25, 26 years old?
Yep. Missed the majority of the season.
They have two players in Alex Caruso, and I forget the other guy's name, that are over the age of 30. It's ridiculous.
Hartenstein.
Yeah, I don't think he's over the age of 30 yet. This Thunder team is freakish. They're absolutely freakish. And, tip of the cap to Sam Presti for fleecing the Clippers and building up that organization. I mean, that's what
there's going to be a 30 for 30 doc on the way they built this thing. Yeah.
No doubt. I here's what I will say. To that 72-win Warriors team win the championship?
They did not, but it was one of the more historic comebacks it was maybe the biggest shot in the history of the NBA Finals to allow that comeback to happen.
I'm just saying, the Warriors, that team looked, invincible. They didn't win the finals. Here's the comparison that I'll make. Assuming the Thunder and the Nuggets match up in the finals, it'll be like the mid to late 90s in the NFL, more mid 90s, when it was like the Cowboys and the Niners would play in the NFC Championship game every year, and you just knew whoever won that game would win the Super Bowl.
No, and I think that's the vibe, is that whoever comes out, just like the Avalanche, whoever comes out of the West, whether it's Colorado, Dallas, maybe Minnesota, that team's probably going to win it. Now it's crazy considering the Florida Panthers have won the last 2, but it does feel very similar, this season compared to last season. And I think that just like we said last postseason in the NBA, the winner of Nuggets Thunder is going to win the finals. And I think that that's incredibly more prevalent because of how much of a step forward the Thunder have seemed to take and the moves that the Nuggets made and what we've seen of this young Nuggets squad. I say young in terms of young in the season, of this Nuggets squad through the early portions when they were fully healthy and firing on all cylinders. It's going to be fascinating to watch because that calendar, as the calendar seems to be speeding toward 2026 already, I can't believe we're less than 2 weeks out from Christmas and we're pushing toward the new year in a hurry. I think that's going to continue going into the new year. And I think before we know it, the postseason is going to be unfolding and aligning right before us. And I can't wait to see how both of our squads, NBA and NHL, kind of stack up against that competition. And by that time, we'll know how this Broncos season ended and whether or not they ultimately crossed the finish line and fulfilled the prophecy that Sean Payton, with no one asking him to, put out there into the ether, which would be one of the best call your shot moments of all time. Anilo, thank you so much for joining us today. Hey, real quick on the way out, our sister station 98.5 KYGO is doing their annual St. Jude Radiothon. It's a 2-day event, yesterday and today. If you have the means to or are able to, please join us as we did here at 104.3 The Fan in support for them. Become a partner in hope. Call the number on your screen there or text KYGO to 626262. You can also scan the QR code on your screen. There is hard-pressed to find a better cause than the work being done at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital for what they are able to do for families struggling with childhood cancer and just the stress and the pain that can bring. We love the work that they do, and we couldn't be prouder as a station and as a media company to partner with them as we do every year to try to raise money for that unbelievable cause. So if you have the means to, if you're able to, please follow that number on the screen and scan that QR code and join like we did in becoming partners in hope. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your Thursday afternoon. We will catch you for a Football Friday edition tomorrow at noon of The Rundown. I do what I love what I do. Second nature to put in the work.